Hey everybody, and welcome back to another CineFix Now Roundtable. It's the end of the week, and we're all in the same room to talk about all of the things, all at the same time. Starting out with my very favorite thing that happened this week, maybe my favorite thing that happened this year.
That we dress the same?
That you guys look exactly the same.
Twinsies.
Really appreciate you guys finally doing that. I know it was a big ask of me, but I appreciate it.
You know, sometimes we switch places and go to bed with you, and you think it's the other one.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I knew. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
that's why I never brought it up.
When you orgasm when you shout his name.
I just feel like that's more for you guys than it is for me.
Yeah,
anyway,
I get a chuckle every time.
The telltale difference is the nipple rings. You have to remember which one has them.
Right.
Yeah.
Which one is on the left and which one is on the right. But my real favorite thing that happened this week is that the Reading Rainbow getting the Kickstarter treatment and coming back.
Butterfly in the sky. I can fly twice as high.
Exactly, and it's all, I mean, as of this taping, it's at $2 million, and they were originally asking for $1 million.
Yeah.
And in
They
2
$1
days,
million in about 6
2
hours.
days ago.
Yeah.
in 2 days, they got $2 million from
So
Kickstarter.
suck it, Veronica Mars.
And suck it, Zach Braff. Like, that's the first
Well,
thing that I thought. It was like, you see,
I think we can all agree
this-
that Zach Braff should suck it.
this is what...
Well, no,
Kickstarter-
Veronica Mars
Rat.
did it in about the exact same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is to me was what Kickstarter is good for, not for like Zach Braff's existential crisis of a movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like this makes
How
me
am I going
happy.
to solve this? In a film.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I watched the shit out of Reading Rainbow when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Can I say that I'm probably the only one that
No,
I never watched it?
I think
I never watched it
I
either.
missed it a little bit, but I don't care because I went back and saw it when I was like babysitting in my teens, and like I was like, why did not my parents not force me to watch this? Why did they make me watch? Why did they make me watch everything else on PBS?
You still haven't forgiven your parents. For
Yes, I was like,
Thanks,
George,
Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad, did you know that Geordie LaForge was on a children's show?
And he has real eyes, real human eyes.
It's funny because I mean, I saw it, but I was like, I think I was older when I saw it, and I still watched.
I
a
fully
decent
intend to
amount
watch the
of
new
it.
ones right now.
Well, and it's
I
going to
don't even
be
care.
it's going to be on the web, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be even easier to watch because, to be honest, I have no idea what channel PBS is.
Yeah.
And it's a Kickstarter
Look,
you can
I'm
be
not gonna watch
happy about. Like,
Well, and one of the things I really liked about what they did on Kickstarter is that they had a really big range of options as to what you could get for your donation. And they were all of the like totally selfish, I just want like to have dinner with LeVar Burton
Right.
for $5,000.
And wear the visor for 10.
Right. But there was also stuff where it was like you couldn't have those benefits go to a school or a kid.
Yeah.
And to me, that was significantly more meaningful. Like if I had thousands of dollars, I would have. I donated in before the million. I did.
Are we bragging about that? Because I did that also.
Yeah.
I was in before
I have-
200,000.
Yeah, and I'm still going to go donate, even though they have $2 million.
Yeah,
so
because
that's just as good.
They can keep it running longer. Right? I mean, like, that's hopefully the idea is that,
Yeah,
the more
absolutely.
money they make, the longer they can keep it running until they get it. As we all know, digital ventures take a while before they become financially viable.
Yeah, they
And
actually
so-
said on the
Yes, we
Kickstarter
do know
page
that.
that they're going to sort of continuously update what their plans are as they get more money because, like, well, this is way more than we anticipated getting,
Yeah.
so now we can
Yeah.
expand the scope of
Which
our
is
plan.
great because it's like, oh, I can get a nicer car now.
Right.
Like, that's not on the table.
Right.
It's always been a really selfless kind of show. You know, it's like we want to encourage kids to read, and that's such a great thing. And then going on this platform in Kickstarter where you see so many like, this is just a passion project of mine, and I really feel great about this project, and I want to get it up off the ground, and that's why I'm asking for your money. Like, so to see something more in the public sort of domain that's a public service that everybody's getting behind in such a big way, that it just made me happy, you know?
Right.
Ba-dum-bum.
That was a lot of the big controversy behind Veronica Mars and Zach Braff was that people thought that it was kind of taking away the point of Kickstarter, which is to be able to discover these like unknown innovators, not only in film but in science and in other things that need the funds to be able to do what they want to do. Even though I love Veronica Mars and I donated to it, and you know whoever loves Zach Braff, like it feels.
I'm sure his mom loves it.
Right.
Still waiting to find some of those people.
But this I feel like used a celebrity for all the right reasons.
They use the power of Kickstarter for good and not evil.
Right.
Right.
Or
And it
just-
doesn't feel like I'm not donating to LeVar Burton's like pet project,
exactly.
Well,
even though it
actually,
is
technically
partially.
you are, because it should be noted that the corporation to which these funds from Kickstarter will go is technically a for-profit corporation. However, I trust LeVar.
I trust LeVar.
Well, also,
Trust
like,
Especially
here's the
like,
thing,
especially when you can see his eyes when the
Yeah.
visor's on.
the reason I didn't donate to Veronica Mars, even though I loved it, and I was very conflicted one way or the other, and certainly not to Zach Braff or Spike Lee did a thing recently, is I just feel like at that, when you're talking about projects of that stature that are in a position to make money, I want equity in a Spike Lee movie if I'm going to help fund a Spike Lee movie. You know,
But this is for a good end. This is
like,
going to help
I don't
kids.
need
and
equity in Reading Rainbow. Like
Right.
children, I have equity in our children or some cheese.
That's illegal. That's illegal. Can't do that.
But
That's
promoting reading amongst kids and Flava Flav and
Right.
whoever else needs to learn how to read.
But look, you know, I mean, again, that is the refreshing thing about this, is that it's going to be money well spent. And
I'm just excited to hear that song over and over again.
It's my ringtone.
I swear to God, if they update that song, I'm going to be so mad. I'm going to drive to Burton's house and get my money back, I think, if they do that.
Give me back my $10.
Give it back. And here's just to shove a segue straight into the next topic. Speaking of giving things back or taking them back, some went down with Marvel this week. Marvel didn't really have a good Memorial Day weekend, I don't think. They lost Edgar Wright and they lost Joe Cornish off of AntMan late last week. And then the same weekend, they lost Drew Goddard from the Daredevil show on Netflix. Now, the Drew Goddard move makes more sense because he was signed up to do Sinister Six. Also, like, he's got other things going on. And they already got Stephen S. DeKnight, who did the Spartacus show most recently, to step back in. And that's moving full steam ahead. And Charlie Cox is going to be Daredevil, so that's not really that big of a deal. But
And Spartacus was good.
Yeah.
I saw that.
But Edgar Wright leaving Ant-Man, I was, like, crushed. I was really upset.
I like me some Edgar Wright. He's Super Fuzz, the Shaun of the Dead.
What? How did Bill Cosby come out of you just now?
It started as like Borat, and then it went to Bill Cosby.
Because I get.
It's like you
Man,
just woke up.
Look.
And you woke up in Bill Cosby voice.
Let's just move on, okay? I mean,
Well, look, here's
Edgar
the thing.
Wright,
I know.
man, I can't believe how good the guy is. Edgar Wright. The stuff he's done that's so great, the Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, the third one in the Cornetto trilogy, End of the World or whatever it's called.
The World's End.
World's End wasn't as, I didn't think it was as strong, but I think probably any studio is still, they're still a little bit nervous after what happened with Scott Pilgrim versus the World, like giving him a big project because his stuff is so inventive and so crazy that getting a big audience can be risky because people just go, I don't know what the fuck this is.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, though, is that he's been attached to this project for coming up on like 8 years. Like, he's been attached to an Ant-Man project for a really long time, and they're about to start shooting, and this is the sort of most accepted version of what happened. Obviously, we don't know exactly what happened, but Marvel had another round of notes that they wanted done on the script, and they wanted somebody else to do it, so they took the script from Joe Cornish and Edgar Wright and gave it to two kind of in-house writers that don't have a lot of credits. And then the script came back, and to Edgar Wright's credit, he was professional about it. He let go of the script. He's like, okay, he's still on board to direct it. The script came back, and it just wasn't at all what he wanted to make.
What
it
a
wasn't
shock.
the movie that he wanted to make. Well, and that's the thing. That's the bigger issue here is what has made Marvel so successful, I think, is they're giving interesting filmmakers and interesting voices these projects to do, and that's what makes them so cool. Like that's what makes them so good. I mean, the Russo brothers doing Captain America 2 was just an insane choice, but it totally worked out. And Edgar Wright doing Ant-Man was another one of these choices. And so now you see Marvel like maybe becoming more of a traditional studio.
I mean, we don't know enough about what actually happened.
Right.
We don't know. It's possible that Edgar Wright is one of those people whose vision doesn't translate well on paper. Do you know what I mean? Like what happens when you're the not to defend the executive, right? But like what happens if you're in charge of like greenlighting this because it's millions and millions of dollars, and like the Russo brothers put like everything they're gonna do on paper
really good
clearly.
presentation.
Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish might have produced something that on paper seemed like a giant cluster. And it's yes, they have an amazing track record, right? But it's still hard, I think, when you're throwing millions and millions of dollars around to say, we're just going to trust you
Trust you, yeah.
implicitly, even if what's on paper doesn't completely work for us.
Well, and the other thing that might be happening is, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago too, is like they're expanding this universe to the point where like everything is working together and interwoven, and you know, maybe Marvel, and for a long time AntMan along with Guardians of the Galaxy was supposed to be like, it's going to be over here, not totally connected, but just kind of over here. Right. And maybe they're wanting to change some of that, and so that changed a lot of stuff too. But the other thing is, like, all that's well and good. Like, maybe Edgar Wright's vision wasn't meshing for them, but I mean, years. The guy was attached to this project for years.
You know what's a shame is that he has such an attention to detail that I feel like he's one of those directors that if he really got the Marvel universe or whatever, he could just pepper the shit out of that thing with just like all these little Easter eggs, and it would be such a delight.
Shaun of the Dead, every single piece. I mean, you pull out any one of the sticks, the whole thing comes tumbling down. It's like every little bit, and the way he can set something off and set something up and pay it off and do it again and again and insert all these complex visual jokes, you know, physical stuff. How many directors can do it?
I mean, I think you make a lot of good points. It could be that, you know, Marvel, like, when it was really time to, like, when it was go time, they just got cold feet. And they're like, look, we're trying to create this universe of projects that can cross over. And we need to have that to be somewhat homogenized for that to work. And if you're off here doing something crazy, like, that's not going to plug into the rest of this universe that we're trying to build. So
I really want to marry you, but I just got to go on one date with you first. And he's like, I'll stay behind the veil.
From Marvel's perspective, you know, I mean, you can't argue with that. Like, they're doing this giant thing, and it's all got to mesh together. But, you know, you kind of have to worry about, like, the cost of that being, like, you've only got the one voice in the whole Marvel universe now. I mean, and you can't have too many cooks in the kitchen if you've got all of that going on. It's got to be a unified voice. So everybody's got to be on the same page. So that makes sense, but you know, I just wanted Edgar Wright to make this movie. You know, and like
I do too.
I'm worried that it's gonna be all, you know, if they're going towards all like in-house writers and in-house directors and creatives, then like
more like bland man.
There you go.
I kind of just imagine both sides at home on the couch eating ice cream. Like, I really wanted this to work.
I know, right? You know, hopefully we'll see, you know, what kind of director they get. If it's a sort of notorious studio director kind of guy,
should we guess the directors?
Should we guess?
Brett Ratner.
I knew you were going to say that.
If they go get Brett Ratner,
I knew you were going to say that.
That'd be no good. So anyway, all that to say, there's a trailer for Book of Life, which is a Guillermo del Toro produced animated feature that looks just bonkers, right?
Yeah.
Espectacular!
Yeah, I would not recommend taking any psychedelic drugs because I think it would just be overwhelming for this one. It's just a bit too much.
Probably too much.
Look, I don't really know what the story is going to be like for this, and the trailer is a little soft on the story, but I love the way it looks. There used to be a LucasArts game called Grim Fandango, and it really dealt with sort of this idea of the land of the dead in the Dia de los Muertos kind of thing, and it was very beautiful to sort of look at, and like that would never become a movie, but this, it sort of captures all of that energy and all of that color, and I'm really excited for it.
Del Toro, I mean, these guys who, we talked about people, Edgar Wright is another fine example of a director who he knows what he likes, he knows what he loves, and he knows how to dive into that world and live there and take you there. And you know, there's so many times when a movie, it's obvious that the producer and the director and the writer and the actors were all making a different movie, and you can just watch it come off the wheels. And you see Del Toro, I mean, when he dives into that mythology and you know, an idea like Day of the Dead, a holiday where you go hang out on the graves and have a party with the dead
Sugar
people.
skulls.
It's so cool.
I'm also hoping it's going to be really good. I have a feeling it might be really good because Real Effects needs it so badly to be really good. Well, in the sense
The movie
of
just smacks of desperate. So
Wow, if only that were a hard and fast rule of Hollywood. I hope it does well.
but like Real Effects, you know, is just launching in terms of releasing their own animated movies because they've been working on effects and animation for everyone else for so long. But they started with the with the turkey movie where they went back in time to stop Thanksgiving.
So yeah, I mean, you know, time traveling turkeys aside, like Guillermo del Toro seems to. I mean, I say what you will about Pacific Rim, like
I like Pacific Rim.
Look, that movie had a clear vision, and it delivered on that vision.
Right.
Whether you wanted to see that vision is, that's up to you.
Yeah, no, that vision was robots are awesome.
Right.
And it also makes a great drinking game.
Yep,
Yeah.
it does.
Annotation.
But then you go back and look at Pan's Labyrinth, and which is a
Right.
gorgeous
Man.
film in just
Mind
about every
blown.
conceivable way. So I mean, and this sort of feels like exactly halfway between those two movies to me. Like there's this big weird sort of spectacle about it that is beautiful to look at, but rooted in you know, a culture that he's also very passionate about.
So what I'm basically hoping is that Real Effects made the time traveling turkey movie was like, oops, and then Guillermo del Toro was like, well, I got this idea, and they're like, just
Go.
You're Guillermo del Toro,
go.
go do your magic, and then he's doing his Mexican magic, and it will be amazing.
And then 20th Century Fox was like, hey, make it rich with a fresh take on pop music favorites.
Yeah, there is the one part of the trailer that I tune out on. As soon as that song starts playing, I'm all right.
I thought that was funny, but seeing it on an IMDb page is terrifying. Just the fact that it says, literally, rich with a fresh take on pop music favorites.
Oh,
that
you
was
were
a quote?
quoting.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
yeah.
Wait,
Thank
is it
God
a
that was somebody else.
Well, I guess for Real Effect's sake, let's hope that this
Let's
one's
hope.
not a turkey, huh?
So
See, when
good.
she lays jokes, they work.
Yeah, they were. So you want to go ahead and segue into the last?
What is the last thing?
We're going to talk about community.
Oh, so speaking of turkeys,
I was going to go. Speaking of dead things.
sure, let's go with that.
Speaking of going back in time and
Speaking
trying to
of-
revive something.
Speaking of
Speaking
days
of
the
complex
Dead
narrative
TV
structures.
shows, Community is going to get its day, maybe, on Hulu.
It's a
Perhaps.
real big maybe.
It's a real big maybe at this point, but it's yet another canceled TV show that I guess the internet got together and decided that
Let it go,
somebody
man.
else needs to
Yeah.
continue making
Let
it.
it go.
The internet refuses to let this show go because,
Yeah.
like, since season 1, there's just been this ongoing idea that it's on the verge of being canceled because it always has been, and now that it finally is, people still won't let it go.
But I mean, this is interesting if Hulu is sort of doing the same Netflix model of finding a show that already has a
Yeah.
really rabid built-in
This
audience
is their
and using it
Arrested
to drive
Development.
subscriptions.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like these are people that will pay, I forget how much Hulu is, $8?
$8 a month, something
These are
like
people that will pay $8 to go watch Community.
Right.
It's true. And it's possible, too, that the part of the reason that show had such low ratings, because ultimately I love that show, but that show never, it amazed me that it got as far as it did. I thought season 2 would have been it.
It
Season
feels
3
like a prank.
It feels like a prank.
I think you can sort of figure out. You think, oh, I think I'm a smart person, and then you get like season and a half in a Community. You go, I'm not smart enough for this. Because there's just too much going on. There's so much. It's so elaborate. You know, I look at the pilot, for example. I went back and read the pilot script recently, and it is perfect. Like, you read something that perfect and you don't ever want to write a pilot, because the way he gives you information, but he wraps it up in the narrative in such a clever way from page 1. But then finally, it's so meta that it just wears me out, and I'm like, I just want to watch something with jokes in
That's
it.
why I've never been able to stay on board with it. Like, I
Yeah.
can appreciate what it does because it's the most meta thing of all
And
time.
30 Rock does the same, but keeping you with
Yeah.
It's a lot
Right.
more accessible.
Yeah.
But in terms
But
of it
the-
moving into the Hulu thing,
Right.
like, first of all, it's extremely preliminary. Like, the only thing that's
Yeah.
been said at all is that
It's just us at this point that's saying it.
right.
It's
Right,
basically one person like decided to write a blog was like, hey, what if this happened?
Yeah.
And then
Well,
they're just like, oh my god.
They've said, like, Hulu has said that they've admitted that they're discussing it,
Yeah.
and they've admitted that there's goodwill on both sides to make it happen. And it's possible in my brain that part of the reason that the show's ratings were so low is because the majority of people who were super big fans of that show probably watched it on Hulu
They live on the internet.
and never maked it on the internet. So it actually makes sense for
On TV.
Hulu.
No, no, and
Oh,
Arrested,
yeah, on
Arrested
TV.
Development on Netflix was the same deal. I
Right.
think to a lesser extent, but their audience is younger. Their audience isn't on network TV as much as they're on online.
But I think that part of what's I love the show, and I part of me really wants 6 seasons in a movie, right? Because that's the joke, and everybody wants 6 seasons in a movie. But at the same time, I don't think going back into the dead and bringing up the things back to life has a good track record. Even with Arrested Development, like Arrested Development was I didn't hate it as much as some people did, but was a huge disappointment for a majority of the Arrested Development fans.
Arrested Development was fine on Netflix,
Right.
but it wasn't the level that it used to be,
Right.
and so it felt worse. It was still better than a lot of things, but it felt worse because it wasn't. It was literally like the reanimated corpse of like your favorite thing.
It was the Weekend at Bernie's-ing of Arrested Development.
Resurrected after like some years off the air though with Arrested Development.
But the other issue with that is he started playing with the format of the show, and so like there's a shorthand in doing something, and then when you change all that up, it feels disjointed and it feels jarring. So like I get what he was going for, but at the same time, it wasn't the same experience as watching the original.
But and then we go back to not touching it at all and leaving it exactly the same, and you go look at 24, and 24, I love it. It's really good. I'm watching the shit out of it. But it feels dated. And yes, there is a much better track record to a network, a different network immediately picking up something else when it's canceled. So there's no gap in time.
It worked great for Southland.
Which is sadly also canceled permanently now.
But that's not what. If it's so preliminary that they're basically just like, there's goodwill on both sides, we'll see if it happens. To me, that sounds like 2 to 3 years from now.
No, it'll be a while if it ever happens. I think that just the bigger discussion though is like, are dead shows dead for a reason, and how worth it is it to bring them back as consistently as we seem to want to bring them back nowadays?
And can there be a model in the future? Could this be the setup for a model in the future when something not Arrested Development, not Community, but the next show that's underappreciated on network TV?
Scandal.
Yeah.
Futurama.
Oh yeah, that's totally underappreciated.
No one's watching it, man.
The next underappreciated TV show gets axed by its network. Can there be a framework in place for it to go straight to Hulu, or straight to Netflix? I feel like, Friday Night Lights got this direct TV deal right off of being killed by NBC. And it went on another 2 or 3 years, and the kids graduated high school, and the show got this satisfying conclusion.
Schedule-wise, it just kept going.
Yeah, I mean, even Cougarton, the show that was on ABC and now it's on TBS. I believe it's Cougarton.
Is that the Courtney Cox documentary?
But yeah, I mean, that's another one where it's pretty much a seamless transition. There wasn't a huge break. But I mean, in terms of making the leap from TV to the internet, that seems to be a lot harder for these people to accomplish for some reason. I remember in Arrested Development, they actually alluded to where the show would go in the show when it was wrapping up.
Looks like it's HBO.
Yeah, it might be Showtime for us. And of course, none of those worked out. It ended up being Netflix like 8 years later. Yeah. So, I mean, goodwill means f*** all, basically. Yeah. So this whole idea of having a transition that is relatively brief and seamless from TV to a web outlet is not precedent.
Yeah. And it's going to be different with everyone because there's going to be different parties involved with each of them, and so templating that would be extremely difficult, I think. But just the fact that it is an option, I love. I love that it's an option, because if a show is good but it hasn't found its audience and it can find its audience somewhere else, great, more power to them. But it's just become such a trick when you get networks and other production companies, and now, I mean, it's the Wild West on the internet still.
Well, the other thing with Community is it's not open to newcomers. Like, you're not going to stumble across a couple episodes of Community and sit there and start watching. Whereas that's far more likely with Arrested Development, because you can at least follow that there's a family and it's not constantly folding in on itself.
The big difference there for me, though, is Community. It always felt like Community sort of wore that as a badge of honor, whereas Arrested Development never felt like that. Right. Community has that sort of like clubhouse kind of mentality to it too. That isn't. It's not an approachable sort of thing.
And
Yeah, I
if
think
that
the-
model exists for the next time, they have to cancel Veronica Mars or The Middleman or whatever else I
Yeah, if they
loved
start
10
actually
years
making
ago.
deals that way, where it's like, hey, if this doesn't work out, maybe we'll transition it to our online outlet. Because, you know, a lot of these networks are wrapped up, like Hulu is ABC and Fox anyway. So, like, if they start actually building shows with that fail-safe, it'll be interesting.
Well, that's a lot of stuff for one roundtable, but I do want to. There was another random factoid that we passed around when we were talking about what we wanted to talk about this week, and it was just too good of a factoid to not mention. So I'm just going to mention it quickly. Shawshank Redemption accounted for 151 hours of basic cable programming last year. 151 hours. What is that, like 6.5 days?
Something like that.
151 hours is 6.29 days, so that's just short of 7.
Just short of a full week.
But I
So-
believe there is always Law and Order
Yeah.
on.
There's
Moral of the story is there's
You just
room
named
for
every
one
show.
solid week of Shawshank Redemption, but no room for Community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let us know what you think of all that Shawshank Redemption and otherwise down in the comments below. And click like and subscribe. And come back next time for more movie news on CineFix Now. Mumble, mumble, mumble. Mike's got to go. Now you can sprint. You can literally
Thank
sprint
you.
from the room.
I'll say, I have a meeting.
I have to go back to work.